Hello and a very good day to you. I hope you had yourself an amazing Thursday. It is the 15th of August 2024, 1903 East African time, and this, of course, is the Black Hot Fire Network, the media of the 21st century. And this is the Black Hot Fire update. So I'm here to tell you about each and everything that was making headlines in Africa today. We're going to be looking at DRC, we're going to be looking at Sudan, we're going to be looking at Senegal, we're going to be looking at the Mpox saga in Africa that I know Maria is talking about, the monkeypox, which has now been declared a health emergency. We're going to be looking at Guinea, which has drafted a new constitution that is going to limit leaders to 2 terms. And of course, apart from that, we're going to be looking at the Olympics, which have just concluded, and how African countries performed, with Kenya having garnered the most medals for any African country. So, for example, this was Faith Kipyegon who broke the Olympic record, the women's 1,500 meters. The 1,500 meters women in the Olympics, breaking the world record as the first man or woman to ever win 3 times consecutively, to ever win the 1,500 meters race 3 times consecutively.
Yeah. But we first-time clearances at 2:34. We saw Barsham. We saw the Italian.
Yep, so Kenya ended up being the African country with the most medals. Of course, it was the Olympics, and as you know, Kenyans are so good at it. They're so good in especially those long distance runs. We tried in the short distance too, but we were never successful, especially with our hope being Omanyala, who unfortunately was not able to win. But in the long races, Kenya performed fairly well and ended up bringing home quite a number of medals: gold, silver, and bronze. So that was Kenya with the Olympics. And moving on, let us look at our main focus of the day, with our main focus of the day being Burkina Faso and Guinea. But let us start with Guinea. So Guinea has drafted a new constitution, a constitution that is going to limit now the terms for leaders to 2, among many other things. So it was actually published online today by the National Transition Council, and yesterday. It was published yesterday. My producer is reminding me that, by the National Transition Council. And it was just yesterday that we were talking about the Tanzanians. The Tanzanians are demanding for a new constitution. We were talking about how among the things African countries actually need is constitutions, new constitutions. And it might sound daft when I talk about African countries needing a reconstitution of its laws, but in reality, if you look at the freer countries in Africa, freer in comparison to the others, they are countries that have reconstituted their laws, because, as you know, you cannot attain freedom, the whole of it at once. You attain it gradually. So, for example, you look at Tanzania. Tanzania is one of the most it's one of the freer countries in Africa in comparison to the others. There are things that you can do in Tanzania that you can never even dream of doing in Uganda. The reason being, you look at their constitution. Right now, they are even demanding for a new one, in as much as the imperialism is there, and in as much as we may not, even the new constitution might not be fully drafted by Africans. But I mean, you just need to look at Kenya, for example, and see the impact that the 2010 constitution has had on the country. One, from going to the devolved governments, which was a good idea, but needed a little more thought to it, because I'm a big supporter of devolved governments, devolving development. I'm a big supporter of devolved governments, but you have to be certain on what you are devolving. What we devolved in Kenya was posts, political positions. That is what we devolved. So it would be a good thing if we had counties in we had devolved governments, but without the overrepresentation. I mean, a county at most needs a governor, at most. All the other jobs that the others do can be done by the governor. I mean, it's just about overseeing the money brought from the national government to the county, overseeing the revenue collected by the counties, overseeing projects. It's more of a leadership role, a managerial role. So if you do with the overrepresentation, for example, I would say the Kenyan Constitution bringing about a devolved government worked for Kenyans, because it was at that point, if you can remember, that was when we started seeing electricity getting into the rural areas, and what was the name of it? The rural electrification. I'm forgetting the name, but a new constitution, African countries reconstituting their laws, reconstituting their institutions, reconstituting their beliefs is one of the steps that we have to take in our journey towards the second liberation, as we call it. Because you look at the systems, you look at the laws, you look at most of the things that we're using, you find most countries that have never reconstituted their constitution are still operating on constitutions that were written in the 60s and the 50s by the colonial masters, and of course, they never had the African interest at heart. So it's time for more African countries to reconstitute their policies, their institutions, their parastatals, their the time is ripe for reconstitution. So the new draft constitution in Guinea is proposing, among other things, what they call a bicameral system that is going to consist of National Assembly and Senate. So it's basically almost the same as the one in Kenya, where it's a bicameral system where there's the National Assembly and then there's the Senate, which is again of a representation, because whatever the senators are doing, the MPs can do. Again, it's over representation when we have 297 elected MPs in a country as small as Kenya, not having factored in the women representatives, not having factored in the nominated MPs. It is over representation. It's a big problem that we have in Africa. So if more African countries can reconstitute inwards, everything from the inwards, reconstitute their systems, reconstitute their beliefs, reconstitute their cultural. You look at, for example, what we were talking about yesterday with some African communities still practicing FGM, with the case of Gambia and Meru in Kenya. Is it Meru or Embu? And Meru in Kenya. Those are things that we can actually, if we continuously reconstituted our culture, we would be able to drop some of those things, because as I said, there's a thick line. There's a line between culture and primitiveness. So some of the other things that are there in the Constitution include banning of the death penalty. So Guinea is going to ban the death penalty, and it's also going to ban female genital mutilation, meaning it wasn't banned before, but it's now going to be banned under the new constitution. So that was why I was saying it doesn't matter if there's a high possibility that most of the new constitutions that we get in Africa have not even been drafted by Africans themselves. The authors, the drafters, the brains behind are never Africans. But at the end of the day, they'll put in a few clauses here and there to make it look like a good, lucrative document. And at the end of the day, we end up benefiting from a few things. For example, in Guinea, it doesn't matter who wrote the constitution. Now, most children, females, most girls will now be a bit more safer, as much as they'll not be guaranteed of safety. But for the fact that the government, the constitution is now going to ban FGM, means that people will no longer do it as openly and as oftenly as they did before. So they go on to say the draft, I'm looking at the constitutional draft, it goes on to say that, for example, anyone who's getting arrested or charged must be informed of her reasons for his or her arrest. Some of the things like those, of course, are going to bring about freedom of speech, because now you no longer fear the police as much as you did before the constitution, because now they have been mandated to, before they detain, arrest, or charge you, they must inform you of the reason for your arrest. that going to be followed? I don't know. But the fact that those rules are there sometimes are binding, especially to the leaders and the politicians we have. You find that a president might be mad, very mad, and wants to do something, but the constitution sometimes binds them, and they can't be able to deal with some of the situations in ways that they wanted to do. So that is Guinea's new constitution. It also goes on to talk about how perhaps the most important thing that this new constitution might bring is the introduction of a term limit for presidency. So remember that some African countries, and quite a number of them, do not have a term limit for presidents. They do not, meaning a president can be in power as long as they can. As long as the people elect him, they can always come back to power. And so when we see African countries starting to reconstitute and, of course, look at things from a different perspective and a different angle, for example, in Guinea, it doesn't matter how dictatorial you are, but for you to remain in power after 2 terms, now that will be a bigger of a process. And the problem is, in Africa, I can't remember of a sitting president who lost. Sitting presidents do not lose elections in Africa. Somehow they are able to always get back to power, cling to power until their death, either death or coup. Those are the only 2 ways that, especially in those African countries that are yet to reconstitute their constitutions, they've not added some of the specifics and important details that they should, like the presidential term limit. But at least Guinea has taken that route, and at least it's going to help the people of Guinea get a little bit of independence, which is very important. So that was Guinea. We started with talking about Kenya, which topped the African medal count at the Paris Olympic 2024, with Kenya getting about 11 medals, 4 gold, and got about 4 gold medals. The second country in Africa was Algeria, which got 2 gold medals, and South Africa also got 1 gold medal. Ethiopia completed the top 4, having 1 gold medal, but with fewer silver medals. That was Kenya dominating once again in the world stage, especially matters athleticism. They are very good in that. Going to Mali now. A few months after Senegalese president B.H.F.N was mandated with the task of bringing the Sahel countries back to ECOWAS. He was mandated that work by ECOWAS, that ECOWAS warned that if the 3 countries do not return, then ECOWAS might die, because they were among the most stable countries. They contributed a lot in terms of minerals and everything. They contributed a lot in terms of money and richness to the Sahel. So now the ECOWAS warned and sent B.H.F.N to make sure that he returns the 3 countries to the Sahel. And of course, they showed him the middle finger, and nobody was willing to go back to the Sahel. Nobody was willing to go back to ECOWAS, which is just but a puppet body that has no meaningful impact in Africa as of yet. Never seen them fight anyone, never seen them rescue anybody, never seen them intervene in any conflict. So today, Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, it was not today, it was yesterday, Ousmane Sonko visited Mali for the first time since his political party came into power in March this year. Ousmane Sonko was the one who had been imprisoned together with the current president. He's actually, you might argue, he's the one who mentored the current president, Diomaye. And when Diomaye clinched power, the first thing he did was, of course, have Ousmane Sonko as his prime minister. So he is now visiting Mali in what he called a diplomatic visit. You know the agenda as well as I do. The agenda is to lead in diplomatic efforts to convince Mali to return to the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, which has about 15 nations and was established in 1975. Now it had 15 nations, so now it's 12 because 3 left. Not yet officially, but the 3 are going to leave ECOWAS. That's guaranteed. So the 3 countries, remember, the 3 countries left the ECOWAS after military takeovers, which instead of the Economic Bloc of West African Economic Community of West African States, instead of it intervening and trying to find out what was happening, the thing that it did was it threatened military intervention if power was not taken back to the rightfully elected leaders. Mark the words rightfully elected, because me and you know that those leaders are never really elected. And a big shout out to Ikan Fire, who's with me. So now, after warning and after threatening and all that, that is when the 3 countries never bowed down to any pressure, and they went on to start the Sahel Alliance, which they had a meeting a few weeks ago in regards to the same. And so now they sent Sonko to try and convince them to come back to ECOWAS. The meeting was between Osman Sonko and Colonel Assimi Goita. Assimi Goita is the interim president of Mali. Sonko said that the countries must set aside their differences so that they can recreate a Malian empire that stretched from Senegal, Ghana, and everywhere in between. Those are the words of Colonel Assimi Sonko, who was speaking when he met Colonel Assimi Goita, who's the interim president. So in January, the juntas of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso had said that instead of helping their countries fight security threats facing them, ECOWAS had imposed what they called inhumane and irresponsible sanctions when they staged the coups to take back their countries. So the juntas are saying that instead of ECOWAS trying to help the countries fight the security threats facing them, because the countries have quite a lot of security challenges, partly because they are trying to break free, and of course trying to break free is never, they never take that lightly. So that is why you've been seeing a surge in each and every, there's a surge in terrorist attacks, especially in that region, with jihadist groups killing people every now and then. I understand they kill about 30 people in a church, in a wedding in Mali. And so that is why the junta was arguing, instead of you helping us maintain security, you are here calling us illegitimate and asking for, So that was Diomaye Faye in Senegal in Mali trying to bring back Assimi Goita to ECOWAS. Assimi Goita and the other 2 leaders left ECOWAS and formed the Sahel Alliance. Monkeypox in Africa has been declared a global health emergency. That is according to the WHO, the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization is the one that declared the monkeypox that has been happening in Africa as a global emergency. I think they are really overreacting and with this thing, because, for example, in Kenya, only 1 case has been identified, which we don't even have the proof and the capability to report that actually 1 person died, as they're saying. 1 case was reported, but they've been really making a mountain out of this anthill to a point that it has now been declared a global emergency, the monkeypox in Africa. Earlier this week, the African Center for Disease Control was the first to declare monkeypox as a public health emergency, before the World Health Organization followed to now declare it also as a public health emergency. The WHO Director General, his name is Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus or something. Don't know where he's from. He was saying that this is something that should concern us all. The potential for further spread is beyond Africa, and it is very worrying. Not my words, but his. I know Maria was talking about monkeypox, so I don't want to dive so much into the monkeypox, which I'm sure she covered intensively. But it has been declared a global emergency after a few cases were reported in Africa, and the Center for Disease Control has also verified the same. The African Center for Disease Control has also verified that it was indeed declared a national health, worldwide health disaster. So that was basically everything that was happening in Africa today. Not much was happening, of course, apart from the fact that even in DRC is one of the countries that are getting really hit by the mpox, if it actually exists, with especially in Goma. A lot of cases have been on the rise in DRC. Remember, one of the main causatives of monkeypox is gayism. Homosexuality is one of the biggest contributor to monkeypox, because that is it's how it is spread. Majorly, it is spread through homosexuality. So what I'm certain is that African countries do not need to worry as much, because as much as we've been corroded and everything, a major populate of the people in Kenya are of sound mind. They wouldn't be engaged in things like homosexuality and everything. Maybe I would give it a 1%, the ones who are willing to be involved in such. In Switzerland, the talks continued. I want you to hear the irony. The peace talks continued in the absence of the army. Not even a representative was sent. So you wonder, but the peace talks continued. The peace talks are the peace talks continued even though the army was not present, which is the big, it's the major shareholder it is the one that should be at the front of talking about peace, because they're the ones that are going to either implement the ceasefire. So I don't understand what the US is trying to gain by holding a peace talk without involving the people fighting. But anyway, they're the same people who are responsible for the fight, so I leave it to them to find a way to stop it. If they're done with Sudan, with taking whatever was wanted in Sudan. But anyway, that was everything that was happening, with the main concern in Africa being the monkeypox. Looks like I feel like they are really exaggerating it, making it, if you look at the toning, if you look at how the reporting, even in mainstream medias, how is one case being reported in Kenya enough to, which you're not even sure of? How is that enough to have even the ambassadors, the embassies release statements adding monkeypox as a health risk, telling the people coming in, beware, there's monkeypox in Kenya. We all know how monkeypox spread, and we know that a majority of the African populate does not partake in whatever activity that causes monkeypox. So if indeed there's going to be a spread of it, the last places that you'd expect it to spread to is in Africa, because homosexuality is not there like that. It's negligible if we take the proportion, the demographic proportion of people that are homosexuals, and the demographic composition of people that are straight, that are normal. Let me use the word normal, because these are the ones that are not normal. If we take and we compared, the first demographic is negligible. It's at 0.00%, 0.1. If it's the highest it can get is at a 0.1. So the last place that should be worried about things like this is Africa. And Jiba Jaba is saying, just don't put it where it's not supposed to be put and you'll be safe. Big shout out to Jiba Jaba. And he's saying it's hype like the green monkey or the bats in the wet market. He goes on to say, yep, go to Manhattan or San Francisco for monkeypox. Yep, I don't understand the whole um it's they're sensationalizing the matter too much. I mean, they might have found maybe one homosexual in Rwanda because that's where it began, in DRC. But then now to reach a point where they're declaring it a global health risk is pure exaggeration. Because the next thing that is going to happen is, I don't know, vaccinations. And now, as an African, before you always know how the script writers are never even creative. They always do the same thing. So you can bet that then the next step will be the same way they did with yellow fever, where you can't travel to anywhere without a yellow fever certificate. You have to have that yellow certificate for yellow fever. It doesn't matter where you're going to. Even me going to Uganda, I need a yellow fever. I mean, they don't require a passport, but the yellow fever has to be there. So the same with Joby, the same with Tanzania. That is, like Joby had been there, and I'm not sure, but I guess they also ask for yellow fever there. Yeah, they also ask for yellow fever. So maybe that is the plan. Sensationalize the matter, make it look like the whole of Africa is having monkeypox at the moment. Then make it mandatory for all Africans to be vaccinated against monkeypox before traveling anywhere. And of course, we never know what is in those vaccines. We do not have the capacity to even test some of those vaccines they give to us, if at all we have the guts and the balls to test them, because conventionally we are yes people. Whatever we are given, we take. So now Africans get vaccinated against a disease that is non-existent with whatever they put in the vaccines, and that is how the eugenics plot continues to work. Anyway, family, thank you for joining me. Joby is coming up in the next few minutes with her show. Hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. That was all that had been happening in Africa today. Not much was happening, but I'll be here tomorrow on the updates. Follow our social media pages everywhere on each and every social media platform at Black Hot Fire Network. Much love.